Now, although we do like to use the word huge in these videos, this is by far the best sale I've seen in probably about 6 months. There are some in here that I've never seen on sale, and there are others, well, quite a few of them, at their cheapest ever prices. Firstly, GG to the person who won the free game, and to all of you that save yourself a bit of money using code SwitchUp over at switchup.gg, you get 10% off any of these purchases, 5% instantly, and 5% back in coins. Alright, get yourself a nice beverage, put the earmuffs on your Nintendo Switch so it doesn't hear about your backlog increases, and now let's get on with the video. What's on sale? Well, let's find out. This episode was sponsored by Before the Night, a Korean game which comes to the Nintendo Switch on the 28th of September. It's going to retail at £18.89, and it's set within a world where the roles have been reversed. Animals are in control and humans, well, they're the pets. And you play as one of them, called Lisa. She's lamenting the loss of her deceased owner, a rabbit, and she sets out on an adventure through the animal world, hoping to find the flowers of life to bring her owner back from the dead. It's all very macabre, and I do love the art style. It's a narrative-filled puzzle adventure with a classic Korean horror twist. The residents of this place change in appearance when it's day or night, with the night seeing you chased by mutant creatures, where you'll have to run away, hold your breath, and wait it out in the bushes until they pass, and then continue exploring the village when the sun rises, or be brave and carry on. It creates a very nice atmosphere, seems to run at 60 frames per second, and isn't it amazing when teams manage to fit all of their work into such a small package? It's just a 171 megabyte download. If you're interested in that one, I'll pop links in the description and the top pinned comment. Once again, a thanks to Before the Night for sponsoring this episode. First up, we have 13 Sentinels Aegis Rim. Now, if I'm not mistaken, this one's just had a record number of sales for Vanillaware, so it's the perfect time for them to drop it 70%, which is, yeah, easily the cheapest that's ever been. Now, 13 Sentinels is a combination of two different genres. On the one hand, it's a 2D sci-fi adventure featuring different characters whose storylines play out in different parts of time. And then on the other hand, it is a real-time strategy. It has an incredible art style and tells a really clever storyline whilst having that strategy gameplay to keep things interesting. It's currently 70% off and will take around 6.8 gigs of your space up, but for me is an easy pick of the week. Fist, or Forged in Shadow Torch, I think it is a Metroidvania featuring bunny rabbits in mech suits. That's half price at the moment in the UK and US regions, and we do have a full review of that if you want to go check it out. It's set in a dystopian diesel punk world that reflects, I believe, the invasion of one country by another, and then a subsequent dictatorship. This is represented with the anthropomorphic characters, but if you like Metroidvanias, this is a really cool twist on it. It has that fast-paced action, and your fist can essentially be modified to do different skills, and it's got a good storyline as well. I really enjoyed this one. Doesn't look the prettiest on Switch, that's I think its biggest downside, but it runs okay, and it's a whole lot of fun to play in handheld. That sale, like a lot of these, goes on until September the 10th. Death's Door comes to us from Devolver Digital, another that's 60% off and its cheapest ever, and it's an action-adventure Souls-like, I would say, that follows the story of a crow who works as a reaper. This one initially captivated me on its art alone, but then I was quite impressed by the overall world building. Now, in terms of gameplay, if you liked Tunic, then you'll probably enjoy this. It has a similar flow to it. There's a bit of freedom in terms of where you can go in the world and what you can do, and it's one of those that hits you with a few surprise characters and you're like, oh my goodness, what is going on here? Now, that one is 2.8 gigs, and that sale goes on until September the 11th. Then it's Disco Elysium time for the EU market. Jared, cue the whirling rags music from the Disco Elysium soundtrack. Oh yes, there it is. Glorious. This has probably topped my list. I think this might actually be my favourite game of all time now. It's at least one or two. It's won several awards. It's an RPG whereby your stat points affect your attributes, your character's mind essentially. And actually, I'm playing Baldur's Gate 3 at the moment, and I see a lot of crossover there, whereby here you have conversations and there's a skill check, essentially a dice roll based on those stat points that you put into different areas. That's really similar to Baldur's Gate. I wonder if they took some inspiration there. Over here, again, everything's absolutely top quality in terms of voice acting. Every character's acted, every line of dialogue is spoken. Well, actually, that's not strictly true. It's like 95%. And it takes place in a little town that's an archipelago called Martinez, featuring Harry Dubois as he uncovers why he's there after waking up completely smashed off his face upstairs in the whirling in rags. It's exceptional. It really, really is exceptional. One of those that's almost has more of a feeling than most games, you know. Hopefully Jared will play a few seconds of just the game trailer because, yeah, exceptionally good game. That one is on sale until September the 10th. Eastward, I think, took me something ridiculous like 80 hours to complete, even though it's a 30-hour game. I don't know how I managed to spend so long in the universe there. It was totally unnecessary, but I just was looking in every nook and cranny. It was one of those, I think, where I didn't want it to end. But it's a top-down action adventure featuring a stoic gentleman and a young girl who turns out to be far more than initially meets the eye. And it's, you know, it's a bit of a trope, isn't it? You see it in things like The Last of Us, but it works so well. Now here they inject the whole world with a lot of humour, but there's also a sinister undertone. It's a post-apocalyptic universe, and the title, Eastward, is in reference to you leaving the underground and then travelling east along the overground railway line, meeting loads of strange characters along the way. I don't want to spoil the story, but it's actually very cool. And there were moments in here that kind of reminded me of early Monkey Island games, like when you went to the circus in Monkey Island, and for some weird reason that kind of stands out to you. There's a moment very much like that in here, but it's great. It will take up 2.6 gigs of your space, but for me is, yeah, an essential pickup, but another one that we have a full review of if you'd rather hear the full story. Now I have to put these on here because, well, I don't have to do anything really, but I'd really like to, so I think some of you should try them. It's Baldur's Gate 1 and 2. Now they're 70% off as a bundle. I think the first is about 3 gigs and the second 3.5. And these are CRPGs, so classic RPGs, and some of the best games I've ever played. There's just no doubt in that when you play these, you might initially, maybe for the first hour or so, you'll be just getting to grips with how dated they are in one aspect, but also how deep they are. You can spend hours and hours just creating a brand new character, tweaking every little system, and then once you've really got into them, the visuals and things like that, they don't matter. If you like the latest one, Baldur's Gate 3, as far as like magic and systems and conversational lore, there's just as much in Baldur's Gate 1 and 2. Incredibly good games. I did try and warn you at the start of this video that this list is just made up of absolutely great games. Then we've got Crosscode. That's got its 25% discount in the UK and US. It's only a small 568 megabyte download, but this for me falls within a trio. There's a trio of games at the moment on Switch that are just incredible, and they evoke memories of past games, you could say. You've got Eastward, you've got Crosscode, and you've got Sea of Stars that's just come out, and actually you could put another in there with Chained Echoes, which, might actually be on this list as well. So yeah, let's find out. Now, Crosscode is a really cool story. Do you know the film Ready Player One? There are elements of that in here, where there's this universe that everyone goes to, and they kind of play it out in this VR world. But then it suddenly just kicks you in the groin with the most unexpected twist, and it's quite hard hitting. I wouldn't say it's for kids. This really is kind of like an adult RPG really, but I can't recommend it enough. It's a great experience, and for that price, yeah, definitely one to consider there. Now, right off the back of that, we have Phenotopia Awakenings, or Awakening, I can't remember if it's one or the other. That has its cheapest ever price, it's 60% off, and the developer based this on Zelda 2, so it's from the side perspective, but you wouldn't think of it to look at it. It's very challenging. It's about 50 hours long, and it's actually quite open world in terms of the way you can move backwards and forwards between the towns, the different areas. There's loads of secrets. It's got a cracking soundtrack and it looks lovely. It's an easy recommendation for me. Now, 2 Point Campus, I know I've read last time I mentioned it, it's 55% off at the moment, and the reason for that is there's a massive DLC out, which is more of a almost like a Theme Hospital DLC. I don't think it's as good as 2 Point Hospital, and I think, you know, if that is on sale, I don't know if it is, I would be getting that first. But Campus, I still enjoyed it personally. Some people just didn't feel it was, you know, there's quite a lot of incentive, isn't there, to heal people with sicknesses, but making a college campus for university students, then putting on events and stuff, some people didn't find that quite as appealing, and in fairness, I didn't find it as appealing, but I still enjoy the game, and the DLC is very fun indeed. So yeah, there's that if you've already got the base game, I guess. Persona 5 Royal has made its way onto the list. That's 40% off at the moment in both regions. I don't think there's much I can say about Persona 5 that you haven't already heard. If you haven't heard anything, just know that it's very long-winded, and if you don't like loads and loads of dialogue, you're not going to like this game. But I don't tend to like loads of dialogue, and I still love the game, so that kind of completely knocks that theory out of the water. So yeah, what is it about this? I don't know entirely, but maybe it's just the characters. I think they're so interesting that even in some of those really slow moments, and there are some, there's no denying, there's some where you're like going backwards and forwards from where you're staying to school, and it feels like you're not actually achieving anything, and then all of a sudden you end up in these labyrinths, which are the palaces of the mind, where you go and try and change the mind of certain people in the game, and there it just gets way more interesting. So I don't know, maybe it's a pacing thing, it intentionally makes those slower paced moments of story development so that when you get to the action ones, they really hit home, and it's a very stylistic game as well. So yeah, one to consider adding if you've got the time for it though, because my goodness, is it a long one. Now I'm in two minds about whether or not I should be recommending Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic bundle. On the one hand, they're two of the greatest games ever, some real classic old school RPGs that managed to take licensed games and make them really good. But on the other hand, Aspyr have absolutely fudged things, haven't they? They were going to do the KOTOR remake, and whatever happened, they dropped the balls on that, and that's not happening anymore. And they've cancelled the DLC, the modded content DLC for KOTOR 2 on Switch. So it's just a complete clanger, really. But look, you'd be cutting off your nose to spite your face, really, if you didn't play through these, especially if you've never done so before and you like even slightly RPGs and you like Star Wars. They're incredible. Every action you take determines whether you're on the light or the dark, and you don't have to, you can do one thing really nicely and then just be awful for the other, and then it will decide where you are, and that affects your relationship with your companions. I was well happy when these came out. Now they're 55% off at the moment for the double pack. It's worth that price. Now, I spoke about it briefly a minute ago. It's Chained Echoes. That's 20% off, which doesn't sound like a huge discount, but it's already quite a cheap RPG, and it's incredibly good. This saw a 94% review score on our channel, which is a rarity. It excels in almost every area. I think it was one I was playing the first hour, and you can tell a lot in the first hour of a game, I think. Not all of them, but most of them. Especially an RPG, for me, it has to do something that kind of hooks me emotionally and makes me go, oh man. And this did it in a very unexpected way. Makes you feel very, very bad about yourself and your decisions, and then you spend the rest of the game trying to redeem yourself. But Chained Echoes, I loved it. Even like later in the game, you get these mechs, and it changes up the whole way it plays. Rather than slowly moving around the world, you can suddenly fly from area to area in the world map. There's a ton of side content there. You get this like base that you have to build up. Yeah, this is great. Really, really good. Highly recommended. It's just 1.2 gigs as well. It'll take you about 20 to 30 hours really if you want to max it out. One of the essentials in my opinion. Now, I think it was one of you that mentioned this, so I'm going to add this in as a hidden gem because I didn't know this pack existed. It's the Dying Light and Call of Juarez double pack, which I don't think is in the UK. I think this is US only, but it's 82% off, giving you both Dying Light and obviously Call of Juarez together, which even when they're on sale, they're never as cheap as this if you were to buy them independently. They're very different games. So Dying Light is obviously a first person, like hybrid RPG action game with an open-ish world and a parkour movement mechanic that kind of reminds me of Dead Island from back in the day. It's a very good game. And then on the other hand, you've got Call of Juarez, which is a first-person gunslinging game that's really linear. They're ones which I've done reviews and videos on the channel, and I like them both. So yeah, I mean, if you haven't got them, picking them up for that price together, I think Dying Light is around 20 to 30 hours at least, and then Call of Juarez about 10 hours to finish. Which takes us on to our Savaloy selection, a series of games so cheap they're about the same price as an English Savaloy or a South African Vetkoek, I think that was how you say it, and all the other various snacks that you lot keep popping in the comments so that new visitors to the channel come on and go, what on earth is this? And first up, we have Gato Roboto. That's ludicrously cheap. It's a complete bargain. Now, don't be put off by what I think is a fantastic looking game. The black and white art style, real simplistic, but it's just a really small, cutesy Metroidvania featuring a little cat, I think in a mech suit. It would take you around about 3 or 4 hours to finish, and it felt like I'd just stuck a cartridge in my Game Boy and I was just sat chilling. Really enjoyed this one. Good soundtrack as well, actually. Then you've got Minute, which is 75% off. Another very small little bite-sized chunky game. Bite-sized chunky? No, bite-sized chunk of a game. Small download, around about 2 hours to finish that one. It's a weird, quirky little adventure game where you play it 60 seconds at a time, hence the title, with the aim of lifting an unforeseen curse. And last but not least, and it's also, I would say, a bit of a hidden gem, is Stories Untold. It describes itself as a narrative-driven experimental adventure game, but it's like a mixture of classic text adventures, point and clicks, and features 4 short stories, and I've not played anything really like this at all. Each of the 4 stories has their own settings, their own gameplay style, and that 80s aesthetic works so well for me. Another, just like the other 2 on the Savaloy selection, that will only take a couple of hours to work your way through, so yeah, if you're after a little weekend pickup, that might be a nice choice. And that's it. As I said at the start, thanks so much to anyone that supports us and uses our code SwitchUp to buy any of their eShop credit over at switchup.gg. We get a little kickback from Nintendo and you save a bit more on your sales. And I think the Sea of Stars physical is now on PlayAsia. If you want the physical, I think it's coming in December, and you can use code SwitchUp23 to save yourself 5%. All right. Nice one. I'm going to go and have a Savaloy. For all things Switch, all the time, keep it Switch up. Cheers, guys. See ya!